1時間ぐらいかかるかもしれませんけど、たまに英語で話を聞くのもいいかもしれないし、質問も英語で、やってみてください。ですごく難しくなったら、まあ、私でもいいですし、ジョン先生おられるし、通訳も OK だし、質問も後で受けます。
First of all, let me apologize that I cannot give you this lecture in Japanese. But nevertheless, I will speak as clearly as I possibly can. And I think the PowerPoint also will help you to follow what I'm saying. And if you have any questions, you can ask the questions at the end in Japanese, that's okay. I have Yoshimizu Sensei who will help me. John Sensei also will help me. So don't be afraid to ask questions it's in Japanese. Okay, so before I go into this lecture, actually I'll just tell you briefly. Okay. I'll tell you briefly about myself. I graduated from the Agrarian University of Havana in Cuba. I think Yoshimizu Sensei was doing some geography just now to show you where it is. And I'm certified veterinary surgeon for Cuba, Guyana, my own country, and the Caribbean. Because in the Caribbean we have an organization. I don't know how many of you may have heard about it. CARICOM is made up of all the countries within the Caribbean community. Mainly they are the English-speaking Caribbean countries. Suriname is also a part, which is the one that speaks Dutch. Haiti is also there in French, but most of them are English-speaking countries. And in the case of USA, it's a little different because before I became a vet, I became a veterinary assistant. So I've been certified by USA to practice as a veterinary assistant. But even though I'm a vet now, I'm not certified to practice as a vet in the USA. As we go through the lecture, you'll understand how a vet operates in his field. Your qualification is one thing, but what you do is another. And I'm a member of the Guyana Veterinary Association, which in turn is a part of the CVMA, Caribbean Veterinary Medical Association. The Commemorative Presentation Association is an association that includes all of the vets that are citizens of countries that were or still are under the jurisdiction of the British Royal Family. So the British territories. And the World Aquatic Veterinary Medical Association, which particularly deals with the field of vets who work in fisheries. Also the Fisheries Veterinary Society, which is basically the United Kingdom, and the World Veterinary Association. I'll tell you a little bit more about those associations as we go along. Okay, so World Veterinary Day is celebrated the last Saturday of April. The last Saturday of April. That's World Veterinary Day. And the week that leads up to that Saturday is the Veterinary Week. So for this year, it's from the 24th to the 30th. That's the Veterinary Week. Okay? 2011 marks the 250th anniversary of the veterinary profession. In my opinion, I consider it much older than that, but I'll give you the reasons why it's considered 250, where they come it from. And because we're celebrating 250th anniversary, they kind of made it a little bit more special. So they even formed a committee called Vet 2011. Okay, so this is a special committee that was formed to actually organize all the activities around the world. And one of the things that they asked vets to do is to, in your own way, it could be in the form of presentations like what I'm doing today. It could be form of propaganda on the television, the newspapers, and the radio, to highlight what veterinary medicine is and make people more aware of the field. So that's our mandate. And the theme for 2011, this is the theme, caring for animals, healthy communities. I hope that by the end of the presentation you'll understand how we create healthy communities when we take care of our animals. Many people don't realize that it's all interlinked because we live in an environment that we share with animals. So the health of the animals impacts on the health of the community. Okay, and so as a result of that, that's the theme. Now, also every year there's a particular field that's dedicated to the anniversary, and this year, this anniversary is dedicated to rabies. And so it's not very clear, but the Global Alliance for Rabies Control is working hand in hand with the Committee for Vet 2011 because we're really highlighting rabies this year. And I'm sure if I ask how many of you heard about rabies, maybe you heard about it but you never took it seriously and didn't realize that it's a disease that is really important for human health. So, what are the facts about rabies? One person dies every 10 minutes from rabies. And so, when you think about that kind of statistics, you wonder, why don't I hear and no one talks about rabies? I mean, you hear about HIV, for example, much more. Okay. I'm not too sure about how to write that, but okay. How many of you heard about this disease? Let me see your hands. If you've heard about this disease before. Wow, really? Okay. Anyways, I can tell you that Japan don't need to worry too much. I'll tell you why. But I really thought that that you would have heard about rabies. Nevertheless, every year 55,000 people die from rabies, and most of them are children. Now, there's a particular reason why. Children spend more time with pets than adults. Because adults are busy, they take care, they make sure they have the food, they make sure they have the place to sleep or whatever. But the children, they play all the time, so they spend more time with the dogs. So that's one of the reasons. And another reason is that children are very innocent in the way they play. They assume that the dog will do them no harm. So sometimes you see them playing even rough with the animal, they tug them, like, I don't know, maybe this dog is not too happy, but she's like tugging at him. That's how they are. And sometimes, without any warning, the dog can retaliate and bite them. This little girl that you see there, her name is Sophie Willis, and she was bitten by a Rottweiler that her father owns. She was just 4 years at the time, and she received 20 stitches. And so there are even cases where babies and so on were killed by dogs. So it's a serious problem. So that's one of the reasons why you see there's so many children being victims of rabies. As you can see, the reason why is because most of the problems associated with rabies comes from infected dogs. Now, really, the original source of rabies, really, for transmission is the vampire bats. I don't know if you've heard about the vampire bat, but some of you like vampire movies, right? Where people suck blood. Now actually these bats, what they do, they live on blood as well. But usually it's animals that contract the rabies from the bats, because animals sleep in the open. The cows, the sheep, they sleep outside. Even the dogs, many times they sleep outside. So they can be bitten by a bat. The very few cases of human rabies that comes from bats occurred mainly because persons entered into a cave that had the bats. Not every bat that bites you means that you're going to get rabies. It has to be a bat that's infected. But sometimes there are these caves, maybe people go exploring into the caves, and there might be bats living there, and then they get bitten usually. That's how people get infected. But generally, humans get the rabies from the dogs. And as you can see from the statistics, it's the most fatal infectious disease in the world. So, how do we deal with it? There are two effective ways of dealing with rabies. One is to ensure that all of the dogs are vaccinated. That's the first step. And the second step is to ensure that you do not have stray animals around, because when you have the stray animals, these animals are definitely not vaccinated because they have no owner. Now, I go back to when I spoke about Japan, that maybe you don't need to worry, because I'm certain that every person that owns a pet, be it a dog or cat, in Japan, those animals are properly vaccinated. If I stop any person that has a dog, and I ask them, can I see the clinic card for that dog? I'm sure they can show it to me. So that's one reason why it's safe in Japan. The second reason is I have never really seen a dog in Japan that appears not to have an owner. Every dog I've seen is either on a leash, or even if it's playing, the owner is somewhere nearby looking at it. So I've never seen a dog that seemed not to have an owner. If it looks like it doesn't have an owner and you try to take it, then you'll see the owner will show up. I'm certain about that. So you don't really have wild, stray animals running around. So those are two of the main points for controlling rabies. Now, having said that, and Japan is free, isn't that so? Japan is free. How do you keep Japan free from rabies? Very important. Whenever someone brings an animal to Japan, that animal has got to be certified as free of rabies before it can enter the country. So these are the ways that, and it's not just about rabies, but it goes for any disease. Okay, so I'll give you a breakdown of what I'll talk about. I'll talk a little bit about veterinary medicine, how it started, how it evolved, who a veterinarian is, what they do, a little bit about the misconceptions. I will compare also a little with human medicine. I'll tell you about the veterinary assistants. I'll speak also about some of the organizations that we have. And then I'll take you to aquatic veterinary medicine, which is very important for us because we are fish faculty. And then finally, I'll just tell you about a few veterinarians who are famous. Okay, so the origin. Veterinary medicine is a branch of science that deals with the application of medical, surgical, public health, dental. Yes, we also have veterinary dentists, diagnostic and therapeutic principles to non-human animals. And this is important, non-human animals, because humans are considered animals. It's either plant or animal. So there's no third category, plant, animal, and human. So that's why I said non-human animal. And this is very important because when we study in veterinary medicine, we study humans as well as an animal. So, but anyway, all this is interconnected. All right, now, I see Yoshimine Sensei put this date here and he explained the reason why. Now, that's why we come up with the 250th anniversary. But prior to that, there were activities. Now, first of all, Egypt. Egypt is very famous. And there was something peculiar about cats in Egypt. The Egyptians, they loved cats. Cats was something special to them. It was even sacred. I don't know if you see photos of Egypt, you will see the Sphinx, which is basically a head of one of the pharaohs. I think it's written like that. I'm not sure. Sphinx. Johnson, can you help me? I'm not.
SPH, I think. Maybe.
Anyway, but it's really strange. But it's called the Sphinx. And it's like, it's the head of a pharaoh, but it has the appearance of a cat as well. And so cats were very important for them. And in Egypt, they had lots of medicinal practices way beyond 1700s. So, and lots of attention were given to cats because of the sacred place that the cats held in their beliefs. Also, in the Middle East and in Asia, elephants were very important. For example, places like Laos and Thailand and so on, they still hold the elephant as really important for them. And camels as well. Camels are very important as well in the Middle East, in the Arab world, and also the horses. So coming out from these old activities where these animals were used for transportation, they were used for war, and even for labor, like farming, etc. Taking care of these animals were also very important prior to this time. Okay, also, any Chinese here? Yeah, you know about this book? A little?
Yeah.
Okay. Now this is basically, it's like a medical book, you can say. It's like a medical book, like a science book. And even way beyond the time of the 1700s, in Mei Ching Su Wen, they spoke about horses in particular, horses. And in that book, they refer to some persons as horse priests. Well, the word priest really refers to someone who's like religious, like a religious person. So I'm not sure if the horses had a religious meaning in Chinese history. I'm not sure. Horses were like sacred. They were special. At least they were special. But so they refer to these people as horse priests, and these persons were the ones who took care of the horses. And they even, in this book, even explain some of the some procedures that were involved in taking care of horses. So there is evidence that prior to that. But coming to why how they came up with this anniversary. Now, the Grand Equerry of France, his name is Claude Bourgelat, he became interested, especially in horses and taking care of horses. And he wrote several books, including this one, which is basically to explain how to rear your horses correctly. He explained all the procedures from the breeding, the feeding, the health, every aspect. And he had a friend, Henry Bertin was his friend, and Henry Bertin was appointed by King Louis XV. He had a very important position in the kingdom, Bourgelat. you know, since you have all of this experience with horses and so on, why not start a veterinary school? And so in 1762, that school was started in Lyons. And then eventually it moved on to Alford. So here is a painting of what the school looked like at that time. Right? So it is from this proper organization of the veterinary field per se that the anniversary stems from. But it is, of course, it is evident that prior to that there were numerous activities, numerous things related to taking care of animals. Lots of knowledge was available. But it was at this time that it was institutionalized, where persons can now train and graduate as veterinarians, that the anniversary is counted from. Okay? And I will tell you what the word veterinarian literally means: one who takes care of horses. That's what it literally means. And there has been a big debate that maybe we shouldn't call ourselves veterinarians anymore because we don't look after horses only. So many persons prefer to change veterinarian to an adjective. And so it's going to be veterinary doctor. But even if you change it to an adjective, veterinary still refers to horse. But the point is that originally, most of the work in this field, the grounding of veterinary medicine, actually started in horses. And then it evolved into what it is today. Okay, so down through the ages, several things happened. After this school started in France, across Europe, North America, and Asia, many veterinary schools began. And many of the persons who started those schools in different parts of the world graduated from France. Many of them. If you check, you will see the founders of many of the veterinary schools around the world. When you check where they studied and where they graduated from, it was in France. So here's a photo of Kansas State Veterinary School. They have a horse there on a surgical table. So that's to show you how what a surgical table looked like at that time. Very interesting. And then you had the First World War, and in that war, horses played a very important role in that war. So many veterinarians were needed in the war to take care of the horses, especially the horses. And to a lesser extent as well, they had dogs involved. Here, 1939, here's a photo here of a dog being x-rayed, so that's to show you how things are evolving and getting better. Okay, the symbol of veterinary medicine, this is referred to as the rod of Asclepius. Rod of Asclepius. That's Asclepius is Greek, so it comes from the Greek mythology. And there's also a story in the Bible. I don't know if any of you here are Christians, but there's a story in the Bible where the Israelites they rebelled against Moses and against Yahweh, and he sent snakes, some very poisonous snakes, to bite them. And so the people, they started to pray and they repented and they asked, please save us from these snakes, because every time the snake bites one of them, they will die. And so Yahweh told Moses to take a pole, make a pole out of, I think he made it out of bronze, I think it was bronze, I'm not sure. But it was some metal, I think it's bronze, or copper. He said to make the pole, and around the pole, you put the bronze snake around the pole and erect it. And anyone who gets bitten by the snake should look at this rod, and they will be saved. And Moses did that, and when people looked at it, when they get bitten and they look at it, they would not die. So that's where it's some person believe it originated from. In Hebrew, it's called Nehushtan. And then also there is another belief that it originated from the guinea worm. I don't know. Guinea worm. Maybe for those of you who would need to study public health, would have to come across this parasite. Trachonculus medinensis. Now the guinea worm basically it makes a hole in the flesh. It goes into the skin. And what happens is, to get the worm out, well, that was we're talking about the olden days. So let's say this is the skin, and then there's the hole, and then the worm is in this hole. The worm is in this hole. So if the doctor wants to get the worm out, the doctor would take a stick, and then he would push the stick into the hole. And then this worm would wiggle around the stick. Alright? And then the doctor would gently pull it out. So some people believe that it originated from this. Alright? But regardless of the origin, the symbol represents medicine in the world. So for veterinary medicine, we just add the V here. Who's a veterinarian? Now, there are certain characteristics about a veterinarian. Generally, they complete 6 years of study. There are cases where it's less. I think there are some degrees that is called a bachelor's in veterinary medicine, which covers about 4 years, I think. There are cases where it's longer, maybe 7, but generally it's a 6-year study course. The person is awarded a doctor in veterinary medicine, and depending on the country or the language in which you study, it could be changed. So the most popular one is DVM, but for example, if someone studies in Spanish, you have Doctor en Medicina Veterinaria, so it would be DMV. There are cases, for example, also in Spanish, Médico Veterinario Zootecnista, so it would be MVZ. So there are many, depending on the country, but the most popular one is DVM generally. Also, after graduating, that's not the end, the person has to be certified by a veterinary board. Now, to be certified, you have to pass an exam, a special exam, and that exam has a written component, and then also has an oral component as well as a practical one. So it could be very rigorous depending on the country. So if you want to practice in more than one country, you have to do an exam for every country. That's how it is. Now, in some cases, there are exams that covers regions. For example, I refer to the CARICOM region. We have one exam for the entire Caribbean. So if you pass that, all the countries that are part of the Caribbean, you can practice. There's also a special exam for Europe. If you pass that one, you can practice in the European Union. So I'm not sure if there's one for Asia or Southeast Asia, I'm not sure. But every country has a certifying board. Now, after being certified, you have to function under the laws. There are national laws and international laws. called the Veterinary Act, which outlines all the things that the veterinarian can do and cannot do and so on. And if you do not follow that act and something goes wrong, someone can take you to court and you will be in a lot of trouble. Maybe you have to pay a lot of money, or in some cases you may even lose the right to practice in that jurisdiction. So the law is very important. And also it requires that you have to study continuously in order to renew your license. Many times each board would stipulate what are the requirements. And most of the times it has to do with what we call continuing credits. Continuing credits means that you have to do additional courses. It could be in online courses, it could be courses in the short courses run by universities or societies. It could be seminars and workshops you attend, and so the certifying board tells you, okay, this seminar is worth 2 credits, or this course is worth 4 credits. And so if they tell you, well, every year you need to do obtain 20, you can decide how you want to obtain the 20. You can attend courses, attend workshops, etc. Obtain the credits, and then at the end of the year, when it's time for renewing for the next year, then you have to produce the evidence that you have completed 20 credits, and then it's renewed. If you fail to do that, your license will not be renewed. So that's why I was telling you that even though you graduate, it's not the end. There are many other things that have to take into consideration before the person can continue. And then very importantly, there's a veterinarian's oath that's international that we have to swear to. This oath, I hope you can see, this oath, usually we swear to this oath at the time of the graduation. At the time of the graduation, after you receive the degree, then there's a swearing session, there's a swearing ceremony where everyone has to commit to this oath. At the end of the swearing, then you have to sign the book that you swore to this oath. And this is binding for life. This is a lifetime oath. Okay? So basically, it says that we should use the scientific knowledge we have for the benefit of society through the protection of animal health, relief of animal suffering, which is also referred to as euthanasia, the conservation of livestock resources, promotion of public health, and advancement of medical knowledge. And then also, with and with dignity, and then we should do it in keeping with the veterinary medical ethics. And ethics is very important because it sets the standard for our profession. And also, we also swear that we need to improve our knowledge. So, in the oath, we're saying that we will continue to study. So, it's obvious that we need to, as part of the license, they set these credits. Okay. Also, veterinarians work with all animals, be it domestic, be it wildlife, be it animals that are used for transportation. And in this case, for example, here, we even protect the borders of our country. So you have to work at the airport, at the seaports, etc., to ensure that you prevent the disease from entering and leaving the territory. So, there are other ways in which veterinarians work as well. Most of them work as doctors, but also many vets work in setting up programs to control and prevent diseases, infectious diseases, such as rabies. Diseases are referred to as zoonotic diseases, the ones that are transmitted to humans. Also, food security, very important because even though many humans are vegetarians, the majority of us love to eat meat. So food security is very important because it comes from animals. Also poverty alleviation, because there are many farmers, poor farmers who live in the countryside, they have their animals, and as a result of our work, we increase their production, and as a result of that, help them to do better economically. Also the animal-human interface. This animal-human interface has to do with persons who, even though they're not veterinarians, well obviously veterinarians have to work with animals, but there are persons, for example, policemen, immigration officers, that may have to work with a dog, like to sniff for drugs, or look for a criminal, or like in the case of the natural disasters, look for survivors. People interface with animals on that level. We help to ensure that the risk of diseases transmitted between them are minimized. Also animal welfare, which has a lot to do with animal rights. There are many veterinarians today who are trained lawyers, so that they go to court and they can fight for animal issues because they're knowledgeable about the legal profession. So there are many vets who are actually lawyers now. And of course scientific research and even political commitment. There are quite a lot of, especially the ministers of agriculture, quite a lot of them are actually veterinarians. Okay, what are the misconceptions? Basically, I think in Japan and many developed countries, this is well established. Veterinarians are well respected and their role is understood, clearly understood. But until today, in many developing countries, persons believe that the veterinary profession is something dirty, and many times I have gone to visit farms, like the person call, okay, I would like to see a vet, and I go, and they don't believe I'm a vet because I wear a nice shirt, and they're like, you're a vet? You look so clean. Vets should look dirty, and like that. So these are some of the misconceptions that we have to deal with. Yes, in times past, vets only worked with horses and cows, etc. So they have to be tough, and they have to get dirty many times. And at that time, they weren't even women because it was seen as a man's job. But that is definitely changing today. Of course, if you're a vet, you will get dirty sometime, but it's not necessarily a dirty job. Okay, comparing it with human medicine. It's linked to the misconceptions. In veterinary medicine, we have to study all animals as well as humans. But when you do human medicine, you only study humans. Which one is harder? I have known of persons, and this is really true, I've known of persons who were in veterinary school and they couldn't pass. They couldn't pass in veterinary school. And they quit veterinary school and they go to human medicine and they pass. Scary, huh? But that's true. But that's because in human medicine, only humans. But in the veterinary medicine, you have to study all of the animals, and they are different. There are similarities, but there are many differences between them. And you have got to know about those differences. Apart from that, a veterinarian, if he wants to be a human doctor, he only needs to study for 3 more years. Only 3 more years he needs to study, and he can qualify as a human doctor. But if a human doctor wants to be a vet, he has to do the entire 6 years. Because even the basics he will not know. Basic subject that you do in the first year. There's no human doctor that can explain the anatomy of a dog, or the anatomy of a cat, or a horse. So even the basics they don't know, so they have to do the entire course. And then, in veterinary medicine, we also protect humans, because I referred to the zoonotic diseases, all right? But in the case of human medicine, they do not protect animals. Also in veterinary medicine, the animals have many differences between them, and you have got to know about those differences. Apart from that, a veterinarian, if he wants to be a human doctor, he only needs to study for 3 more years. Only 3 more years he needs to study, and he can qualify as a human doctor. But if a human doctor wants to be a vet, he has to do the entire 6 years. Because even the basics he will not know. Basic subject that you do in the first year. There's no human doctor that can explain the anatomy of a dog, or the anatomy of a cat, or a horse. So even the basics they don't know, so they have to do the entire course. And then, in veterinary medicine, we also protect humans, because I referred to the zoonotic diseases, all right? But in the case of human medicine, they do not protect animals. Also in veterinary medicine, the animals cannot talk to us. If any one of you have a dog or a pet that talks to you, please let me know. I'll be very interested to document that. But with my experience, they do not tell you anything. So you have got to find out what is wrong with this animal. They cannot tell you. And so because of that, whenever someone brings an animal to you, you have got to analyze the animal completely. In human medicine, it's not like that. Maybe you may have had this experience like me. I will tell you, when I go to a doctor, I never let them know I'm a vet. I always keep it secret because I analyze what they do. And in many cases, in some cases, even the diagnosis that they give me, I discard it and I go to another doctor because I'm not convinced that is what he said is wrong with me. I'm convinced that's not the case. So, but I have gone to doctors, and I'm sure you may have had that experience where all you do is sit in the office and talk to him. And he listens to you. And when he finishes listening to you, he writes the prescription and sends you to buy the medicine. He doesn't even touch you, just talking to you. Of course, in some cases, that diagnosis could be good. In some cases, it could be bad. Communicate with the doctor and help him in his diagnosis. In veterinary medicine, that's not the case. Also, in veterinary medicine, even though we want to help the animals, animals know. Animals know that we want to help them. So, but still, even though they're ill, many times they're scared, they're afraid. And as a result of that, they may retaliate. So you have to tie them down or keep them down so that they cannot hurt themselves more. But in the case of humans, you don't need to do that. Maybe only in the psychiatric hospital, maybe you have to tie down the patient to give them an injection or something. And in the case of the children, maybe you have to give them candy or something. But you hardly need to restrain your patients in human medicine. Also, this is very important. Patients can attack you. Always. Always, I'm aware of that. And many times, a pet could be very quiet, have no problems, and then the person tells you, this dog doesn't bite. He's okay, he's cute, he doesn't bite. But when you go to touch the dog, he bites you. So always, I'm aware that even though the owner says the animal is nice and doesn't do anything, it can attack without warning. So these are the kind of things that goes with the profession. Also, patients, they have to carry the patient to you. So because of that, many times someone have a pet and they might not realize that the pet is sick. And they take a long time to take the pet to you, and by the time I get the pet, it's almost dead. It's like, what can I do now? But that's because they wait a long time before they bring it. In the case of human, as soon as you feel sick, you're almost dead. It's like, what can I do now? But that's because they wait a long time before they bring it. In the case of human, as soon as you feel sick, you say, I need to go and see the doctor. So the chances of the human doctor dealing with the problem very early usually is the case. So, like I said, many times vets are overlooked and, they think, that's not so important. But in the case of human medicine, they're generally well respected. So, that's the balance sheet for you. Okay, the veterinary assistants. Basically, veterinary assistants are like nurses in the veterinary field. They do several things. They assist us in surgery, etc. They collect the samples. They do physical examination. But this is very important, like I told you. Because we don't know what's wrong with the animal, you have to check the entire animal. The eyes, the mouth, the nose, the entire animal you have to check. Because you're really not sure what's the problem. Also, they keep the records. They also take the temperature, the respiration, and the heart rate. They will take care of the wounds. They clean the teeth. Also set up the table for surgery. And they maintain the equipment. Now, some things the veterinary assistant can do on its own, but there are many things that are stipulated by the law that they can only do under the supervision of a vet. There are many medicines, for example, that can only be used if supervised by a vet. So within the veterinary assistant role, this is also written under the Veterinary Act. So the Veterinary Act doesn't only cover the veterinary doctors, but also covers the veterinary assistants. The veterinary doctors, but also covers the veterinary assistants. Okay, now some of the important organizations. The World Veterinary Association, this is very old. It was started way back in 1863. And this association is a true representation of all the vets because directly or indirectly, all vets are part of this organization. Why is that so? Because around the world there are several veterinary associations. There are national veterinary associations and there are regional veterinary associations. For example, here there's the Asian Association, there's Australia, New Zealand, right? There's Africa, there's PanVet for America Latina, there's American Veterinary Medical Association for USA, there's Canada, there's Europe. So all of these associations are part of the World Veterinary Association. So as long as you are a vet in your national association, you are a member of the World Veterinary Association. So this is truly global. And the objective of the World Veterinary Association is to promote the interests of animal health and the interests of animal welfare globally. Okay? Now the other one that Yoshimura Sensei referred to before is the OIE, which is the World Organization for Animal Health. This actually started basically has its roots in 1920 in France. Basically what happened was that they were moving some cows from India and taking the cows to Brazil. And during the transition from India to Brazil, the cows made a stop in Antwerp, at the port in Antwerp. And right there was an outbreak of a disease called rinderpest. So as a result of this problem, France was the one who said, listen, we have got to do something about this. We've got to set up something that can control the spread of animal diseases around the world. And that's how the OIE was formed. It comes from the French, okay? So it's like Office International Epizootie, something like that. So it's really, the OIE comes from the French one because it actually started in France. The OIE is like the United Nations of veterinary medicine in the world because the members are the countries. Each country is a member of the OIE and they send their representative. The representative is the highest veterinary officer of the country and usually it is what you call the chief veterinary officer, CVO. Usually it's the chief veterinary officer. So it's the highest ranking veterinary official of the country that represents that country at the OIE. And each one of them has a vote, and they make the decisions that determines the status of diseases, etc. And Yoshimizu Sensei's laboratory is accredited by the OIE. I didn't know that Yoshimizu Sensei, I didn't know that before I came to Japan, but after I got into the lab and I realized, this is a reference laboratory for OIE, I was really happy. I think it's the only one in this faculty that's accredited by OIE. So there you have it. The closest lab to veterinary medicine is Yoshimizu Sensei laboratory, all right, in this faculty. Okay, now aquatic medicine has quite a lot of progress, but it is very young. The World Aquatic Veterinary Medical Association only started in the year 2006, very recently. So it is now starting up. And it is very important, and vets are doing quite a lot. For example, many surgeries, etc. I have here, okay, this was done, me and Yoshimizu Sensei, we went to part of Hokkaido, did some vaccination. So there's lots of activities in fishes at this time. So I want to show you there is a doctor he's from the Netherlands. His name is Peter Workman, and he is very, very popular in this one. Okay, he's very popular in surgery. He's a very nice person. He's a member of the World Veterinary Aquatic Association. I want to show you some of his pictures. Okay, he talks about the euthanasia. You know, here, this is a fish that the fish is placed into the water with the medicine that puts them to sleep, that makes them sedated. So here you see the steps, and the fish eventually falls asleep. Then you can take it out and you can do the surgery. And that's him there, Peter. So that's the sedated fish that he has there. All right. And this is the surgery unit. This is where he does the surgery. All right. So the water is right here, and then he operates above. And he uses this foam like a wedge. So he would place the fish in the middle of the wedge, and then he would go ahead and perform. And I will show you some of the surgery that he has done. Fibroma, which is like a tumor. You see he takes it off there. Here it is on top of the fish and already removed. Here again, you see the tumor is here at the side. And now this is after surgery. Removed. So veterinary medicine is actually being applied to fish right now in quite a lot of ways. Okay, so that's after surgery now, then it's put in nice clean water. That's another tumor that's on the tail itself, the tail fin. This is also very sad, where the fish loses the eyeball, so it has to remove it. This could be as a result of tumors as well, or it could also be as a result of accidents or fights as well. In this case, it's an eye tumor, also removed. You see, that's removed the entire eye. Exophthalmos. Maybe Yoshimizu Sensei may have referred to this in some of the diseases that you did. Exophthalmos, where the eye bulges for several reasons, and in some cases, the only way is to surgically remove the eye. So under anesthesia and then removing the eyeball. There it is. And these fishes actually survive after surgery. In some cases, the fish can die as well, but he has quite a lot of his patients after surgery survive. Okay, so that's the blood vessel that he blocks there. And then recovery. Okay. So, as you can see, veterinarians are actually doing surgery. This is the surgery, this is tumor in the ovary actually. See, the tummy is bulged as a result of the growth of the tumor. Okay, so that's Peter's work. So as you can see, veterinary medicine is taking the making strides in some very important fields. Okay, so now finally, I will just mention some famous veterinarians, starting with the women, Dr. Mary Olson. She's actually the pioneering female veterinary doctor. In 1933, she was the only female student in veterinary medicine at the time enrolled in Cornell University. And she graduated in 1937. Her husband, her father, her granddaughter, and her son were all vets. So she had a real vet family. There's something interesting about her. In 1944, she was bitten by a dog that had rabies. And what she did, she scrubbed the wound and she threw boric acid on the wound, and she survived. And then eventually she died later on, in 1970, she died after suffering a stroke. Miss Debbie Turner, she was Miss America 1990, but she was a veterinary student at the time. In 1991, she graduated as a doctor in veterinary medicine. So as you can see, veterinarians can also be pretty kawaii. And then also, well, these famous veterinarians that I have here, these are from the Caribbean. Dr. Kriyan Singh, he's from Trinidad and Tobago. He's the only vet that is in a wheelchair. And he actually practices in a wheelchair. Alright, so even with his disability, that did not deter him to be a vet and to practice. Alright? And Dr. Ptolemy Reed, this is the only photo I found of him, but he was actually the Prime Minister of Guyana, my country. I'm not sure, but maybe he is probably the vet that has attained the highest position in power in any given country. He became the Prime Minister, and that was from 1980 to 1984. All right. So also these veterinarians here, these are like they're into showbiz. So Dr. Baxter Black, he's a comedian and a poet, and he puts on shows and so on. And he's also a cowboy. You know the cowboy, right? People who ride the horses and they catch the cows and stuff. So he's also a cowboy. So very, very popular in the USA. And Dr. James Herriot, he died in 1995. He was a famous writer. And he wrote several books, and many of them were actually made into movies and TV series, such as All Things Bright and Beautiful, All Things Wise and Wonderful, If They Could Talk. Those were books that were written by him. Okay. Now, finally, I have a question for you. Can you tell me who's the most stupid veterinarian? Kashi? Okay, I will give you the answer now. Dr. Doolittle. So that's the end of my presentation, and if you have any questions, thank you.
皆さん、2回、教訓を 所に犬を連れていくと日本注射してるよね。で私最初なんでですね日本に狂犬病がないので予防注射するのかっていうのはしばらく分からなかったんだけども、この分野になってからはね、その日本の犬をラビーから守るために生きてるっていうのはまあ理解できるわけで、今ペットで結構例えばプレーリードッグとかいわゆる家庭にいる犬がいるじゃないですか、ゲッシーとかね。で検査するとああいうのがたまにねプラスになるんだそうです。できちっとやっぱり予防注射を受けた犬を犬もしっかするときは飼うべきなんですね。で噛まれると死亡率がすごい高い。いやその発症してればね。でそういう点は気をつけてくださいというか、ここは、皆さん水産の人だからちょっと違うんだけども、で知っとくべきだからでペットをどっかに移動させるとかね、預けるときは必ず予防注射を打ったという証明が今いりますよね。でこの前の時間話したようにアメリカから犬を連れて帰るとすると成田なり韓国にしばらく留め置きになります。で、検査が OK になるとであと、水産と同じ話をすれば口蹄疫でもさ、それから回していいですよね。であれは出ると今殺処分になってるでしょ。でそれも日本に、宮崎でこの前出てしまったけども、あれをもしワクチンを打って、助けたら日本は汚染地域になるわけね。でそうすると輸出するときにすごく障害が大きくなってで全部殺処分してしまったのは日本にはそういう病気がないフリーの国だということで、すごく国際的な対応をやりやすい。で魚は今KHV って同じ扱いをされている病気がありますよね。だし、日本は今汚染国になってるからそれを何とかしなきゃないっていう話だけども、天然魚が感染してるんでちょっとねすいませんやりづらい。でどうすればいいかって皆さんぜひ考えておいてください。水産の人間としてね。であと問題になるとすればサケマスの VHS ってウイルス性の出血性の敗血症でそれも特定疾病になります。でこの辺はね今デモンさんといろいろ話をしてるんだけど、あと家畜と魚と違うのは薬の代謝速度が違うんですよ。で休薬期間っていうのね、例えば薬をあげるでしょ。で病気に治した後その魚の中に薬が何日間とどまっているかっていうのがすごく重要なので、それ食品衛生法の問題でそれがなくなってないと市場に出したら全部、廃棄処分になっているから、でそれは、データが必要なんで、そのデータは家畜のデータと魚のデータとね同じ薬でもだいぶ違う。でそれは温度が違うからだけども、その辺はねきちんとやっていかなきゃないんですよ。で今北海道大学っていうのは地方大学でなくて、でオール日本でオールワールドだから当然今の話ぐらいは分かってほしい。で、皆さんの卒業生の多くは結構違うと思います。で世界中でね水産の卒業生がいないところは多分なくて、グリーンランドに行ってもいるし、それから南米の地球の一番端っこに行っても卒業生はいるしね、いろんなところに行きます。で多分皆さんそういう期待されてる人材なのでね、少なくてもまあ1カ国語ぐらい、2カ国語か日本語と英語から南米とかに行くとしたらスペイン語ですよね。それからアフリカに行くとしたらフランス語が必要なので、まあできれば3カ国語にすればいいけど、まあ、その前に2カ国語ねですよね後ろで笑っておられますけど、絶対に必要です。でぜひね今2人いられるでしょ。で、留学生の人ともね話をして、コミュニケーションをしてるどういう単語を使うのかっていうのがねすごく重要なので、時々レクチャーを聞けばいいと思います。質問ないですかせっかくだから。で最近なんか皆さんすごくねシャイなんですよ。はい、どうぞ。
Thank you. Very interesting. I have one question on the fish surgery. How many seconds does you need to do the surgery in fish? Because fish cannot live
Ah, okay.
you put it once.
That's a depend on the species. When you study for the cup, 30 minutes be okay. 30 minutes. But gear, you must put the wet towel or wet materials on the gear. That's okay. 30 minutes. But this, in the case of the cup, but in the case of salmon, it's very difficult to do such a long time. So 1 minute or 2 minutes be okay, no problems. So recently I didn't do the surgery, but when I was a graduate student, I opened the cavity and removed some organ or something. So on that time, we finished 1 minute.
Here.
And in this slide, there is a, how to say, chemical drugs. Japanese name is oigeno, or MS-52 chemicals. This one.
Butorphanol.
So then, how actually this kind of surgery in fish being is it because it's more on the I mean, is it already popular now? For house, like is it only on like a farmer in fisheries, fisherman a large scale, and then you do a surgery on fish, or is it already like a fat fish? You do a kind of surgery in fish because usually in my knowledge is fish is sick and then it's just die and then you never take the fish to the for surgery. So
Yeah. In developed countries, actually that's in Europe, USA, Canada, etc.
in Japan,
If I go to Guyana as a fish vet, I will die from starvation.
so
Because if the fish die, they can say, I can buy a next one.
hmm.
So it's usually developed countries. I'm not sure about Japan.
In Japan, the most important species is the colored carp. You know the koi. Colored carp. Some of them is very expensive.
Yeah.
1 million yen or 10 million yen. So
If you notice, you'll see some of them here. Or
that's one.
this one.
This one is a tumor of the ovary. So this is very, very popular in Japan. So in this case, persons belong to fisheries experimental station open the cavity and remove the tumors. It's not so difficult.
But also, one of the things I need to mention about veterinary medicine, people, when they attach to their pets, they do not put a value on that attachment. They will pay whatever it takes to make sure that their pet is okay again. It's a emotional attachment. So they don't care about the money. Just save my pet, that's all.
One last question. For fish surgery, do you have to have a veterinary license, or if you graduate from a fisheries faculty, you can do a fish surgery?
In Japan, later I will introduce the license systems. We have two licenses. One is veterinary people and one is fisheries people. But fisheries agency opened a special school 3 years. And if you attend this course, you pass the examinations, you can get the license. But
only for fish.
Only for fish.
But to answer your question, I'm glad that Yoshimi-sensei mentioned about the Japanese system. In other countries, they do not have a system like Japan. In many countries, only the vets are allowed. But the problem is many vets do not know about this. So the fishes eventually died. Yeah.
せっかくだから聞いてみてください。疑問ね。
I listened to the presentation. I thought it was really interesting, especially because I had no real idea of what the word meant. But thinking of nowadays and how technology has advanced in the field of molecular biology, what are the most famous models for studying the fish disease? Not only fish, besides fish, what are the main problems with disease in marine animals that relate
It depends
to...
on the country, actually. Depends on the country because the climate plays a very important role. The species as well. But I come from Guyana, which is very tropical, and Hokkaido is very cold. So that was one of the things me and Yoshimizu Sensei discussed. What disease? Because the diseases I have at home, Hokkaido doesn't have. So the only thing that we can merge together is the methods of diagnosis, which is what I'm doing. Because regardless of the disease, regardless of the species, regardless of the place, you have got to follow the same principles. So generally the principles are the same, but the diseases, the agents, the microbial agents, etc., they may differ. But the principles remain the same.
So what you, in aquaculture models, what you experience mostly is bacterial pathogens and virus pathogens?
Aquaculture is something that's really dependent on management. It really depends on management. But there's certain things that will always be there. For example, parasites. No matter what you do, you cannot eliminate parasites 100%. So I know parasites will always be there. But if your management, it depends on your management, that will determine what happens. As well, the other thing is, we spoke about when I showed you the photo at the airport. That has to do with the epizootiology, epidemiology, right? How the disease enters the country or not. If you have your aquaculture set up, you have got to be careful about your biosecurity. So when, for example, Yoshimizu can tell you about the problems in Japan, like they bring the eggs, they buy the eggs from somewhere, or they buy the fingerlings from somewhere. If you're not careful, you may be introducing the pathogen. So it's management. But I cannot tell you that bacteria is more prevalent than viruses. It just depends.
I would imagine though that aquaculture gives you a chance to document and find out more about pathogens because of the usually densities of culture promote faster transmission rates and the prevalence of resilience of pathogens is higher than in natural conditions maybe because of the density factor. So for
one of the things with not aquaculture, marine life in general, you have to remember that animals live in the water, and they also excrete in the same water that they live in. They feed in the same water. So all of this is happening within the same environment. So you've got to be very, very, very careful. Maybe you can get away, like if you're on land, I don't know. I've gone to maybe a pig farm, for example, go to a pig farm, and the person, they don't clean the pen as much as they should. But the pigs, they find this area and the pigs decide, okay, we will sleep here. They do that, and then the pigs say, over here, I will excrete, like that. Pigs it. So even though you don't clean, they keep this area clean for themselves because they want to sleep there. But in the case of fishes, you cannot do that. They live in the water, so it becomes more complicated as well.
So it's very important to fisheries people do these things. So usually veterinary people don't know those kind of
Yeah. The person who owns the farm, they have to check the temperature, the oxygen, filter, everything. But most times the vet do not go to a fish farm. That's what I try to do now. Study fish science.
ちょっと時間になりましたので、はい、じゃあありがとうございます。あとですね、この前のレポートね、全部こう今日は